In a post commemorating the life of Lindsey Graham, FBI Director Kash Patel said his bureau is assisting local authorities and has made every necessary resource available, which is weird because the late senator died from natural causes and authorities do not suspect foul play. Patel may have already been on thin ice heading into the weekend. Sources tell MS Now that on Friday, top Trump officials were so disturbed by a range of Patel's actions that they summoned him to the White House for an emergency meeting to course correct, although it's unclear if those two things are linked. Joining us, MS Now senior White House reporter Vaughn Hilliard, managing editor of The Bulwark, and MS Now contributor Sam Stein, Stu Stevens, still with us, which is good news. All right, so help me understand this reporting regarding Patel. We'll leave Graham to the side for a moment and talk to me about why Patel was summoned to the White House.
The room just instantly devolved into pure theater. Kash Patel actually threw out the witch hunt defense seriously. It's the most exhausted PR cop-out in politics, and he delivered it like a weak diss track. Watch the clip. He doesn't just say the words, he practically spits them into the mic, leaning in so hard the audio actually clips. Meanwhile, Kagan doesn't even blink. She just holds this icy, I already drafted your subpoena stare while Kash nukes his entire unbothered outsider brand on live TV. Hit that like button and sound off in the comments, because if he's sweating this hard at a routine Tuesday hearing, these next depositions are going to be legendary.
Fun.
There's multiple reasons, and our understanding from our reporting is that there is growing frustration with the FBI director on a multitude of fronts, and that there have been, we're told, past interventions by folks close to Patel to try to get him to correct course with this White House. He has drawn intense scrutiny over the perceived lavish spending of not only the FBI and the transportation, but also for example, jet ski excursions when he is out on official business. And on Friday, we were told that he was actually set to go out on an official trip to Chicago, where his girlfriend happened to be performing later on that evening. And that on Friday, that trip was promptly canceled, and instead, Kash Patel made his way back to the White House amid this level of scrutiny. Of course, this also came after hours in which subpoenas were issued to New York Times reporters over a leak investigation related to their reporting on the Qatari jet Air Force One. But for Kash Patel, this is mounting pressure, we are told, in frustration with his performance here at the helm. And over the course of now a year and a half in which he has been given a long leash to do extensive work, but not always is delivering on the demands, and instead drawing scrutiny around some of the spending coming out of his office.
Yeah, so what is it? Is it that he's not delivering on the demands? And if so, what are those demands? Or is it that he's attracting all these bad headlines, Vaughn?
It's all of this here, Katie. Our reporting as to exactly why he was called back on Wednesday, the precise reason is not clear. But what we do know is that he has drawn a great frustration within the White House, and that to a great extent he is in trouble with his current position. Now, of course, we have heard that he has drawn the ire of the White House and that his job prospects in the future were on the line, but he has continued to stick around here. And so I think that is where, when you're looking at Kash Patel here moving forward, we were told by somebody close to the White House who had been really watching this all unfold, questioning why that there were conversations among folks at the White House and in Trump's orbit about why Kash Patel was going to be going to Chicago on whether it be official business or to see his girlfriend perform in concert, at the same time that there was reporting that the president had new intelligence to suggest that Iran had new threats on his life. And at the same time that Iran was in the middle of war, and it was suggested to us, why was Kash Patel not sitting at the White House ready to go inside of the Situation Room? Why was he continuing to put these and prioritize these types of trips, even if they are for formal business, as the FBI suggests is the foremost concern of his? Why, under these circumstances, is he continuing to move forward at such a time like this of national security implications?
Why might Kash Patel, Sam, why might he feel that he can do all these things, that he doesn't need to be tethered to the White House, that he can use the FBI jet and go see his girlfriend perform concerts? Why would he feel that sort of freedom?
I feel like that's a rhetorical question. The answer, obviously, is that because he reports to one person who wants him there, and that's Donald Trump. and Kash Patel is an ally. He'll do what Donald Trump asks him to do. The FBI has launched, obviously, politically motivated investigations. And in return, Trump gives him a leash. Look, I think it's fair to say that we're in unprecedented waters here with the FBI. And Kash Patel specifically. It's not
a... And guys, it gets worse. When Kagan actually started reading from the subpoenaed text threads, the ones where Kash literally replied with a fire emoji to a plot to sideline the lead investigators, you could hear a pin drop from DC all the way to Palm Beach. His own legal team was frantically sliding him. Post-it notes like, high schoolers caught cheating on a midterm, but the damage was done. He tried to play a game of constitutional chicken with the Supreme Court and got absolutely steamrolled in high definition. This isn't just a bad news cycle for the administration. This is a Category 5 legal hurricane happening live in 4K. They genuinely thought they could just install their ultimate loyalist, gut the agency, and hide behind a wall of classified red tape, but Kagan just took a judicial flamethrower to the entire playbook. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now, because my sources are sending me the unredacted transcript tonight, and we are doing a massive live stream at 8 p.m. that is going to blow the lid off this entire cover-up.
Every day that you have these politically motivated investigations, not every day you have an FBI director who shows up at the locker room of the men's U.S. Olympics hockey team drowning beers, right? Like, this is different stuff. But he's doing what Trump wants him to do, which allows him to get a little bit of a leeway. Not saying that he's not in trouble, right? I mean, he's causing a lot of headaches. The expenditures are embarrassing. The flights, the use of the jet, especially when he was on record prior to serving in the FBI, criticizing heads of the FBI for their use of the jet. That's embarrassing too. It's hypocritical. Even the tweet around Lindsey Graham was so unnecessarily provocative. You would never imagine something like that. And just the way he responds to the reporting, pointing out that his jet ski is gold-plated, I mean, it's absurd stuff. But again, to your question, so long as Trump is in his corner, he's going to be fine.
There's a dismissiveness. Yeah, his answer was, I have a gold-plated, my jet ski is gold-plated, ... and then calls the reporter dumb blank. I won't say it on TV. Let's talk about the Lindsey Graham post and what it implies, Stu. He seems to imply that there was something nefarious going on with Lindsey Graham's death, saying the FBI is assisting local authorities and has made every necessary resource available. What sort of resource might need to be available to investigate a aortic dissection, Stu?
You know, at a certain point, asking why a ridiculous, not serious, not very smart person does ridiculous things is sort of like, how can you know? I mean, this is just who Kash Patel is. I mean, I think, you know, my dad was an FBI agent. I think if you had a vote among drug dealers, pedophiles, human traffickers, who their favorite FBI director would be, it's Kash Patel. Because he's just diverting so many of these resources. It should be going after these really horrible people to Donald Trump's whims. There's 250 agents. That's a lot of human beings, well-trained, a lot of money invested in them. In Georgia, going after the Georgia ballots, well, there's nothing there. That just means 250 FBI agents aren't going out and doing their job. The same with the seashell conspiracy, all of this. And yet he still can't deliver one indictment on Epstein. Look, I think this guy is an embarrassment. Even at a certain point, there might be some embarrassment factor inside the White House. And, you know, the reality is Donald Trump can find a less embarrassing human being who will do exactly what he says. So why not?
I wonder if the tweet about Lindsey Graham or the investigation into reporting that they don't like, the New York Times reporters, et cetera, Sam, is that to protect his position? Is that because he thinks that's what the president wants in light of this summons to the White House last week?
It's actually a really good question. How much of this is motivated because he's trying to interpret Trump's desires and get ahead of them? How much of this is just Kash Patel doing things he wants to do that happen to align with Donald Trump? I don't really know the answer to that. I couldn't possibly get into his head. But I will say this, putting aside the New York Times stuff, the tweet about Lindsey Graham and the FBI investigating it, you can make the case that Kash Patel was sort of raised politically in this kind of conspiratorial milieu. and he's part of it. He certainly has a lengthy history of going on podcasts and pushing conspiracy theories, including around the Epstein stuff, we should know. So it doesn't necessarily shock the mind that he, may dive into these waters.
And you better believe the establishment PR machine is in total meltdown mode right now, because the second Kagan slammed down that 8-hour ultimatum to hand over the unredacted burner phone logs, you could physically see the color drain right out of his face. We are watching the whole anti-establishment crusader facade completely disintegrate in real time, folks. It turns out the guys screaming the loudest about the deep state were just busy building their own private, weaponized shadow government behind closed doors. They are scrambling in the signal chats right now, desperately trying to figure out who's going to take the fall, but the internet never forgets, and Kagan already has the receipts locked in the vault. I am telling you, the next 2 days are going to be an absolute masterclass in panic. So smash that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and get down in the comments with your predictions. Does Kash finally flip on Miller, or does he ride the ship all the way to the bottom? Because somebody is definitely getting thrown under the bus, and we are going to be right here streaming it live when the wheels hit.
As for Patel's luxury vacations, they write, quote, "Your jet setting and the lack of justification for these trips are out of control. This is not the conduct of a committed and faithful public servant, especially when entrusted with ensuring the safety of almost 350 million Americans." The FBI has not responded to MS Now's request for comment. Kash Patel facing bipartisan scrutiny for his jet setting around the globe is where we start today with the reporter who broke that story, Justice and Intelligence reporter Ken Delanian. Also with us, former Assistant Special Agent in Charge at the FBI and National Security and Intelligence Analyst Michael Feinberg. And joining me at the table, law professor at Hofstra University, the author of the Substack, Who Decides, James Sample is here. Ken, rare to see Republicans questioning the conduct of anyone in this administration. Take us through your reporting.
Yeah, that's right, Alicia. And one update, the FBI did respond after the story was published. I got a detailed email from FBI spokesman Ben Williamson taking issue with the allegations in the letter from the Democrats and answering in a very detailed way the questions that Chuck Grassley was raising, which I found interesting because he provided answers that he didn't provide to us when we first asked about, for example, the BMW SUVs back in December. So about those SUVs, he now says, which he didn't say back then, that they had originally been purchased by the State Department and they were sitting idle in a warehouse, and the FBI, Kash Patel, decided to purchase them, and that the taxpayers actually saved money, $270,000 per vehicle, he claims, as compared to the armored Chevy Suburbans that they usually use to drive the FBI director around. Now, I don't have any documents that validate that claim, but that's what he's saying. And what's interesting is that Chuck Grassley, who's the Republican chairman of the Judiciary Committee, is demanding and asking for those documents. And he, unlike the Democrats, he has the leverage to get them. And it seems to be having an effect on how the FBI is responding. So Grassley's concerned about those BMWs. He also is asking a series of questions about Kash Patel's use of the FBI jet, which is essentially an executive jet. It's a private jet, the kind of jets that CEOs fly around the country on. It's a luxurious travel experience. And Kash Patel, the FBI, pointed out that he's required by policy to fly on that jet for security reasons anywhere he goes, even on personal trips. And that's true. But what the Democrats are saying is that he's obviously taking advantage of this rule to essentially attach vacations to these official trips. And we all saw in Milan when he was in the locker room after the men's hockey team won the Olympics, that was allegedly an official trip, but he had a lot of personal time there. And he claims, Kash Patel does, that he's reimbursing the government by policy for the cost of a coach fare for all of these trips, which is what the rules require. But Democrats say it's a matter of he's exploiting this, and they question whether he's actually creating official trips to sort of as an excuse to go on vacation. They're actually saying that he may have opened an office in Wellington, New Zealand, just as an excuse to go to Australia and New Zealand. Now, again, he's denying that, and they're saying that whistleblowers are telling them that when he goes on some of these trips, he's demanding that FBI personnel set up, special excursions for him, including jet skiing and a helicopter tour. Again, he is denying that today through an email to us, but that's what the Democrats are hearing from whistleblowers. And I hear a lot of concerns, I have to say, inside the FBI about just what this looks like, about that they can't imagine a Robert Mueller or a Chris Wray doing this kind of thing. Even though they flew on the jet, they sometimes flew to their vacation homes. They didn't do the kinds of things that Kash Patel is doing.
Michael Feinberg, have you heard those same concerns, and what does it mean for the FBI, even just the appearance of impropriety?
It means that the organization is going to be taken less seriously by the American public. And that's just not a reputational harm.
And let me tell you, the panic happening behind the scenes right now has got to be absolutely, every single spin doctor in Washington is currently stress-eating Tums in a windowless war room, desperately trying to figure out how to frame a direct constitutional meltdown as a win for the base. But Kagan didn't just gavel him down. She cornered him with his own receipts, and now she's got the unredacted metadata locked and loaded. Patel actually thought he could just bring his late-night podcast bravado into the highest court in the land. And instead, he walked face first into a judicial buzzsaw. The walls are rapidly closing in, the compliance clock is aggressively ticking, and somebody in that inner circle is about to start singing like a canary to save their own skin.
The FBI is only as successful as its ability to talk to people on the street, whether victims of crime, witnesses to horrific events, or even putative subjects themselves, and establish rapport and trust, and know that the conversations and interactions are going to be taken with the utmost seriousness. But if every other day there's a story about the FBI director, trying to leverage jet skis out of a business trip, that's going to bounce back poorly on the workforce who's out there actually dealing with the community. And, I just have to add, there's a real irony here in Chuck Grassley getting upset about this, because Kash Patel was not a shoo-in for this position. There was a lot of chatter, as you all know, that he might not make it through confirmation because in most Washington circles, including conservative ones, he was not viewed as a very serious person. But after the preliminary meeting prior to his confirmation hearings, Chuck Grassley effusively endorsed him and said that he was just the person to help reform the FBI and restore its reputation with the American public. Perhaps this effort now to suss out the jet issue is some form of a mea culpa, but we wouldn't be here today were it not for Grassley.
Well, Ken, Senator Grassley said back in April of Patel, I've never had an FBI director cooperate with me as much as Kash Patel has cooperated with me on my request for information, my request for documents. You made the point to me earlier, Ken, and I think it's a good one. This was not a letter that Chuck Grassley intended to make public. He was trying to thread the needle of maintaining his relationship with Patel, perhaps in the interest of actually extracting the information that has apparently now been shared with you. If they are sharing this with you, do you think it is one step closer to their sharing the same information, perhaps with the receipts we also desperately want to see with Senator Grassley?
Well, to be clear, Alicia, Chuck Grassley's office did not share this letter with me. I'm not sure they intended this letter to be made public. In fact, they took steps to keep it secret, which is interesting because normally these kinds of requests are made public. And Grassley's a really interesting figure because he does, for years, he's been around forever, right? And for years, he had a habit of and a reputation of conducting bipartisan, vigorous oversight and being a steward of the taxpayer dollar. But in recent years, he's become so partisan and such a defender of Donald Trump and Kash Patel and everything the Justice Department and the FBI has done that it was surprising to see that he's actually asking critical questions here. But he points out in the letter that he has a bipartisan history of doing this, and he feels like it's part of the role of Congress to oversee this kind of spending. And so he's doing it. Whether he'll actually follow through and demand these documents and then make them public after or have a hearing or that kind of oversight remains to be seen, I think. But this is the first step.
If there were actually, James Sample, proper oversight, which, as you've made the point to me, only possible if there is bipartisan interest in that oversight, especially at a time when you have Republicans in control of the Senate, is there then legal liability for Kash Patel if he is found to have misused government assets?
Potentially minimal legal liability. So, for example, the cost of coach airfare, which is what you're required to reimburse when you use the jet for personal purpose.
Who literally built his entire brand screaming about radical transparency and declassifying the swamp's dirtiest secrets, is now out here hiding behind the exact same national security excuse he used to absolutely roast the last administration over. You literally cannot make this stuff up, guys. He's throwing Epstein files and mysterious enemies at the wall, just hoping something sticks to dodge a basic subpoena, and Kagan is just staring at him like she's watching a toddler throw a tantrum in a grocery store. The absolute irony of the ultimate anti-deep state crusader running the most opaque, weaponized shadow operation we've ever seen is completely off the charts. His legal team looked like they wanted to vaporize into the floorboards right then and there. You already know the White House comms team is sweating bullets, probably drafting a parting ways statement just in case Kagan actually drops the hammer with a federal contempt charge. We are watching the entire house of cards collapse in real time. Folks,
The tell is not the BMWs, although that is remarkable reporting. I'm convinced there are about 6 Kendallanians, not one. The tell here is that the letterhead comes from Chuck Grassley, and that makes it meaningful.
Michael Feinberg, in the letter that Congressman Raskin and Senator Durbin write of Patel, they write, quote, demoted personnel in Brussels because they failed to ensure you were adequately entertained, stoking fear among rank and file agents that they must provide your demanded perks or face termination. Concerns and strains prompted by the prioritization of your personal entertainment on international trips may have led to the resignation of the head of the FBI's international operations this year. There is, of course, Michael Feinberg, just on its face what this all means. There's also the extent to which his requests, the use of resources, begins to muddle the focus and where resources inside the FBI should actually be going.
I would push back on the notion that there is any focus at FBI headquarters right now, aside from carrying water for whatever Donald Trump and Stephen Miller's policy priorities of the day are. When I was in the FBI for over a decade and a half, there was actually a really rigorous process for most of that time where we prioritized what threats were most salient, where we needed the most intelligence analysis, where our shortfalls were in terms of facilities and physical stock, how we were going to get things as quotidian as ammunition for both training and duty carrying. I hear nothing from my friends who are still there, except how all those processes have fallen apart and how where previous directors, they obviously felt some sort of affinity for the president who appointed them. They maintained a brick wall of propriety between how they conducted themselves officially and whatever those personal feelings were. The fact that Chuck Grassley and Kash Patel have this direct line of communication that you quoted earlier has not redounded to the benefit of the workforce. In fact, that pipeline of communication has been used almost exclusively to tar the names of FBI agents who investigated Trump and then fire them. So I'm just not buying that anybody in this entire situation is really behaving as an honest.
We're talking mass resignations, encrypted group chats blowing up, and veteran investigators actively leaking memos because they refuse to be turned into a partisan hit squad. And honestly, can you blame them? Kash Patel literally stood there, under oath, and admitted the quiet part out loud that national security is just a convenient blank check to cover up an internal purge. This isn't just about some redacted Mar-a-Lago documents or Epstein files anymore. It's about whether federal law enforcement answers to the Constitution or operates as a private mafia for the Oval Office. The working class voters who initially tuned out the noise are officially exhausted, and they definitely didn't sign up for a full-blown constitutional crisis every single Tuesday.
CCP refers to the Chinese Communist Party. He's speaking about this man, a Chinese national extradited to the U.S. from Italy more than 2 months after Patel's Olympic locker room celebration. The investigation also cites special perks on official international trips, including VIP snorkeling in Hawaii. That is likely referring to a snorkeling trip the director reportedly took to the USS Arizona in Pearl Harbor, hallowed ground, a military cemetery where more than 900 service members are entombed. Snorkeling there is not allowed, with some rare exceptions for military and government officials, normally those responsible for managing the memorial. The VIP snorkeling was not on Director Patel's official schedule for his trip to Hawaii. Beyond VIP perks and international travel, lawmakers on both sides of the aisles are demanding answers on how Patel gets around Washington. It was revealed today by Durbin and Raskin that Republican Senator Chuck Grassley, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee and a stalwart ally of President Trump, sent a letter to Patel asking him to defend his purchase of BMW SUVs. Patel had reportedly directed the FBI to purchase the luxury vehicles despite the long-standing policy of the FBI director being driven around in Chevy Suburbans. In Grassley's letter, he also wanted Patel to list each flight he took on an FBI aircraft, if it was for personal reasons, and if so, if he had reimbursed the government. When asked for comment on the story regarding the SUVs, an FBI spokesperson said that 2 of the FBI's armored Suburbans needed to be replaced and that the BMWs, quote, had already been purchased by the State Department sitting idle and unused in their warehouse. The FBI purchased the vehicles from the State Department. Whatever the explanation, the many questions surrounding FBI Director Patel sure seem a far cry from then citizen Kash Patel.
Chris Wray doesn't need a government-funded G5 jet to go to vacation. Maybe we ground that plane. $15,000 every time it takes off. Just a thought.
Go take their money. Chris Wray doesn't need a private jet.
Chris Wray was the former FBI director. The ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, Jamie Raskin, joins me now. So, Congressman, you've obviously been a frequent critic of Director Patel. How confident are you that Senator Grassley, who's been a staunch ally of President Trump, is committed to getting to the bottom of who is paying for what when it comes to the director's personal travel?
Well, he sent a letter back on May 6th. We've been demanding answers to this set of problems for several months. All the evidence that we have indicates that the taxpayers are footing the bill for junkets and splurges and special recreational experiences for the FBI director. And now we know that there is serious bipartisan concern. The chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chairman Grassley, is demanding answers. And Senator Durbin, who's the ranking member over on the Senate Judiciary Committee, wrote a letter with me today demanding an accounting. Now, look, the FBI director is supposed to travel on an official plane, even if he's taking a personal trip. But it seems pretty clear to the whole world that that was a personal recreational trip when he went out to see his beloved American Olympic hockey team play, and we saw him chugging the beers and partying with the boys. As he said, he should pay for that trip. He's talking about grounding an airplane the FBI director used on official business for $15,000. That trip to Milan cost more than $100,000. So we want to make sure that he has written a check to the taxpayers to reimburse us for that, because we don't pay for VIP snorkeling. We don't pay for jet skiing. We're not paying for luxury travel. That's not what we're in it for. And it's obviously a massive diversion and distraction from the real work of the FBI.
And has Director Patel offered Senator Grassley, to your knowledge, any proof of reimbursement for private use of FBI aircraft?
No, we are aware of no proof or documentation of reimbursement on any of these cases. And we know that Senator Grassley has asked for it, and we're asking for it too. So we now have bipartisan and bicameral determination to get to the bottom of what's happening over there, including on the purchase of the BMWs.
And let's be perfectly clear here, guys, this is exactly why the political establishment is in absolute free fall right now. Because when you strip away the cable news spin and the endless PR statements, what you're left with is a system that is fundamentally allergic to accountability. Patel really thought he could just waltz into the highest court in the land, wave a magic wand of executive privilege, and make a massive paper trail disappear like an expiring Snapchat message. But Kagan basically looked him dead in the eye and said, "Not today." The sheer hypocrisy is what gets me. We've got everyday Americans working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on, expected to follow every single law to the letter, while these guys at the top think they can just ignore a federal subpoena because it ruins their brand. The panic in those windowless Washington war rooms must be astronomical. The walls are closing in, the receipts are officially stamped into the public record, and we are witnessing the complete collapse of the ultimate political bluff. Hit that like button, drop your predictions in the comments, because I guarantee you those midnight document dumps are coming next, and we will be live streaming the second they hit the docket.